Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Today we're going to talk about the actual events that played out on day 12, and that is actually October 21st, about halfway through the rushed production, the day that the shooting actually occurred. And this is information I certainly had never seen before, and is possibly something completely new to you as well. Before we get to that in this particular episode, I want to complete the issues that I mentioned in the previous episode dealing with technicalities. So it has been speculated that the pace or work rate or hours, the hours worked weren't particularly unusual for a low-budget film. But all that it took was one particularly exhausting day for a segment of the crew, I'm not saying for all of the crew, but for a section of the crew, and that might be difficult to recover from, particularly in a rushed scenario. And so going back to that LA Times article, quote, tensions continued to build. The Sunday before the fatal shooting, the schedule had run from noon to midnight. The film permit dictated that there be no significant disturbance of terrain and or vegetation on the chaparral-covered arroyo. And so the crew had to haul heavy equipment. One piece weighed around about 140 pounds. That's 63 kilograms. I wonder if that wasn't the techno crane. In any event, they had to haul this equipment over rough terrain through apparently a tight area where vehicles were not allowed. And apparently the afternoon sun was punishing. It was a very hot day. And besides that, there were gusts of wind and fine powdery dirt. And so on that particular day, it was just a very hard Sunday. And bear in mind, they were working on a Sunday. It wasn't as though they had the weekend off, right? And on that particular Sunday, the camera crew stayed until 1:30 a.m., 1:30 in the morning, gathering the equipment, which, according to the article, was scattered around the site. After that, they had an hour-long drive home. So take it from 1:30 a.m., they get home at 2:30 in the morning and perhaps get to sleep just before 3 in the morning. And then they've, of course, got to be up and back at work at 6:30. So maybe getting 3 hours sleep, right? And so one camera assistant spent part of the night in his car in the parking lot, and that's according to Lane Looper. I think you can clearly see in a scenario like this where you get 2 or 3 hours sleep, but you've still got to drive an hour each way, each day. It might be okay on the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, but eventually it's going to catch up with you on a back-to-back thing like this. And the fact is the strains and the workload on the camera crew is much greater than a lot of the other crew members, including the actor. The actor is, called to do his performance, but other than that, it's far more work for the camera crew to get themselves in position and get their equipment exactly right. And once the film is done, the other players can go back to their campers, but the camera crew still have to, dismantle their equipment, right? It's a lot more work for the camera crew. And so on the Wednesday, a camera assistant who lives in Albuquerque asked for a hotel room, right? The Wednesday is the day before the incident happened. And it was a sensitive issue for the camera operators because they can spend from half an hour to an hour after wrap time dealing with their equipment, gathering their cameras, cleaning them, and dealing with that aspect, that technical side of things. And interestingly, again, according to the article, during a separate film project in 2018, Lane Looper said he had actually fallen asleep behind the wheel. And so it looks like it was Lane Looper, who lived in Albuquerque, quite far away, who actually asked for the hotel room, and then he was told, no, you can't get it. And that was when tension apparently hit a breaking point. So in other words, it feels like on Wednesday, the 20th of October, following this very hard day on the Sunday, that he was finding it, very hard going, right? And when he asked for a hotel room, I'm not sure if it was in Santa Fe, but one would presume, he was told no. And then things got really tense. And it wasn't just him who felt that way. There was a digital utility technician, Jonas Huerta. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I don't know if it's Jonas Huerta. But he said they don't really care about us, right? And so within the Rust production office, and this is the part that I think is quite scary, this idea of the staff asking for hotel rooms was actually being treated like a joke, so much so that the production staff had T-shirts printed. Bear in mind, this is a very quick response. And they had these custom long sleeve T-shirts ordered. And on the T-shirts, they'd printed kind of sarcastically, ABQ for Albuquerque is an hour away, right? Kind of a sarcastic way of quoting what some of these staff members had said, right? Then there was another one, error 404, housing not found, right? You might think that this is all a rumor, that the talk about the shirts and the jokes and all that is just a urban legend or something. But someone actually took a photo of the shirts. And according to the article, someone with knowledge of the situation said these shirts arrived at the production office Thursday morning. That's the day of Elena's death and also the day that these staff members quit, right? So, if you're talking about tension hitting a breaking point, ordering these T-shirts and then you have 6 staff members, you can say that whether they quit, they walked off, or they were fired. I think it was a combination of those. But the point is there was this enmity between the production staff and the crew, right? And not just that, it was being rubbed in by kind of making a joke out of the whole situation. And you can imagine that can leave a bitter taste in the mouths of some people. And so the other thing that I think is really interesting is that Lupa wasn't the only crew member who communicated his grievances via email. Huerta and 4 others did the same thing. So you had 5 people emailing their feelings of concerns prior to Elena's death. 5 different people sending it by email, not just communicating in words, but actually kind of making it official, right? And so according to the article, 5 crew members composed emails to Walters late Wednesday night saying they intended to resign. Again, you can say that they didn't quit, they were fired, or that they weren't fired, they quit. There was mutual disdain, there was mutual unhappiness. And interestingly, in terms of, bear in mind, you've got Walters, who's kind of at the center of this, the unit production manager. I think she also probably needs to be spoken to. And when the LA Times did ask her for comment, she did not respond to repeated requests for comment. And so now we're going to quickly go into the email Huerta wrote to Walters. He wrote, quote, I have to wake up early and commute to set. My job is very physically demanding, and I am beyond exhausted by the time I wrap. I found myself nodding off or having to take micro naps on the roadside just to get home safe, right? And that's the end of that quoted section. And the interesting thing is that you might say, well, that's something completely different to what happened to Elena. He had problems he was tired, he was exhausted, he wanted hotel accommodation. This has got nothing to do with safety. Well, in fact, Huerta did express safety concerns that extended to the weapons on set. And this is, again, according to the article, quote, I also feel anxious on set. I've seen firsthand our assistant director rush to get shots and he skips over important protocols. He often rushes to shoot. I've had more than a few occasions where I've been close to the weapons being fired with no regards to my hearing. Sometimes he, meaning the assistant director, rushes so quickly that the props department hasn't even had the chance to bring earplugs, and he rolls and the actors fire anyway." End quote. And now the really pertinent part about this is that Huerta's email was sent Wednesday at 9:15 at night. And we know what happened the very next day. We know what happened to Elena the very next day, almost like the next morning, the end of the next morning. And so apparently what he told the Times was, if it wasn't for the hotel, they would have stuck it out. If it wasn't for the fatigue because of traveling so far, they would have stayed, right? So what we're seeing here is there were concerns about the inexperience of the armorer that had been raised on the first day on set. We also see there were conflicts between the production manager and the camera crew. And if you just take the bottom line about those concerns, it's you've got camera crew, not just one but several, who are complaining about their experience. They are saying that they are tired. They are saying that they are concerned about their own safety in terms of because of their fatigue, and they're concerned about some of the safety issues on the set. And then what is the attitude of the production managers, not to one crew member, but to several? How do they respond to that? And then what happens immediately in the aftermath to that? And so, according to the article, they talk about a cascade of bad decisions that seems to create this chaotic set. And I know Alec Baldwin has denied that. He said, and other crew members have also said it wasn't chaotic, it wasn't unsafe, it wasn't any different to any other set, right? But I don't know if you can make the argument that it was no different to any other set when you have a situation like Helena Hutchins being shot, killed, and also the director shot and injured. I don't think you can say, you know what, conditions were the same on this set to any other set. It's almost like reverse engineering. The fact that somebody was shot shows that something that should have been done wasn't done. And from there, one can go and say, well, were there other things that should have been done that weren't done? And certainly the emails of Lupa and Huerta seem to provide some reinforcement to this notion that things weren't quite kosher, things weren't quite the way they were supposed to be. Does that make sense? And I think it did make sense to the Santa Fe County Sheriff Adam Mendoza, because he said quite early on at a news conference that he felt there was some complacency on the set. That's what he said. Complacency, that's the word that he used. What does complacency mean? It means that there's a kind of a laziness, a kind of a sense of not being strict or disciplined enough, not having high enough standards when it comes to certain things such as safety issues. And what we clearly see is that some safety issues needed to be addressed. And the question is, how serious were they, and whose responsibility really were they at the end of the day? I'm not going to take it further than that. I did think I'd be able to get to the events of day 12 in this episode, meaning the day of the shooting, but I haven't been able to. So I will be dealing with the events in some detail of day 12, that Thursday, that fateful Thursday, from quite early in the morning when the crew arrive on set to just before lunch. And we'll do the final episode. It'll probably be the fourth or fifth episode in around about 7 episodes. So look out for that. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Like, share, leave a comment. Obviously, hit the notification bell if you want notifications for these various episodes in this series. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.